Hello my friends, it's Laura. Today we are going to be doing the Encanto Book Tag. So I was actually tagged to do this by Angela from Literature Science Alliance, so I will leave her video linked down below, as well as the original creator of this tag linked down below in the description. I thought that this would be so much fun to do. I love Encanto. It's honestly rocketed up to my second favorite Disney movie of all time. And the song We Don't Talk About Bruno is constantly on repeat in my head all day long. So I absolutely love it. Very excited to do this tag. There are 8 questions and they're all themed around the songs in the movie. So let's just get into it with question number 1. Name a book that explores multiple family generations. The first book that came to mind was The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, because that's the one I read the most recently, but then I remembered Homegoing by Yajasi. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and in this book it starts out in Ghana in the 18th century. We follow 2 sisters who don't know of each other's existence. One sister is sold into slavery. The other sister marries this white man and lives a life of relative privilege, although not really. And then we follow, I believe it's like 8 generations down, their descendants. So it's definitely multi-generational. It is an absolutely exquisite, beautifully written, heartbreaking, hopeful still book, and I absolutely love it. I honestly do not talk about this book enough, but I love Yajasi's writing. I think it is so stunning, and this had so much to say, and it's really not a long book, so I highly recommend it. And I loved seeing the things that got passed down from generation to generation, and I think that's one of my favorite concepts of books. One of my favorite things is multi-generational stories, and I definitely want to read more like this. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. Question number 2 is, what is a book you enjoyed that took longer than you expected to finish? So I would say I'm mostly on the faster side when it comes to how fast of a reader I am. I usually don't take more than a week to get through a book. And I remember when I read Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, this is the sequel to Vicious. This took me a good 2.5 weeks to finish. I don't know why. I don't remember. I read this back at the end of like, what, 2018? I don't know if I was like in a reading slump at the time, or if I don't know. But it took me like 2 weeks to finish this book, and I absolutely loved it. This is a 5-star for me. I love V. Schwab. She's one of my favorite authors. I love her writing. I really enjoyed the book. I just remember that I would always pick it up, and while I was reading it, I was really enjoying it, but then I would put it down and kind of forget about it for whatever reason. I don't know. But yeah, it took me a while to get through, and it shouldn't have, but I also really enjoyed it. So that was the only one I could think of for this question. Question number 3 is, name a character who has to do it all. This was another hard one to answer, but I ended up going with Sloane from Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. And I can't say why she has to do it all, because I think it's kind of a spoiler. But in this story, we're following, is it 5 chosen ones? 5 teenagers who have to save the world. They're called to save the world. They are the chosen ones, and they do. But then 10 years later, something else happens where they're called on once again to save the day. And it's the events of that and how it affects Sloane, but also what happens at the end of the book that makes her have to take literally the world on her shoulders. And it's interesting. And so she definitely has to do everything. She has to do it all, but it's very hard to like talk about that without giving away spoilers. So that's all I'm gonna say. This, by the way, is an absolutely fantastic book. I highly recommend. I never hear anyone talking about it, and I absolutely adored it. Question number 4 is, talk about a book you haven't talked about. So I tried to go back and think about all the books that I read before I started my channel, and for whatever reason, this one stuck in my mind, because this is a book I literally never talk about, and I don't talk about nonfiction in general on my channel very often, but this is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a memoir of sorts, and it talks about her 17 brushes with death. So these are like all near-death experiences. There's times where she was in situations where she could have died, and she talks about them in this book. Maggie O'Farrell's writing is absolutely stunning. I loved the writing in here. I thought that it was such an intriguing and interesting look into her life, and I think that it really had a lot to say about female intuition, because there were definitely a couple situations in her life where she knew something was off. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't really know what it was, and then came to find out that something was very wrong. And I thought it was just done so well. I have definitely been wanting to pick up more from Maggie O'Farrell, because I know that she also writes fiction as well, and I just haven't done that yet. So maybe this is a sign that I should look into picking up more books by her. But I highly recommend this if you haven't picked it up yet. It is an amazing and very thought-provoking read. Question number 5. Name a book that you thought would be light and fluffy, but it hit emotionally. And I have the perfect answer for this one. I actually have 2 books, but the first one, Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. If you read this, you know. This, I thought, was gonna be a light and fluffy YA contemporary, kind of like the other 2 books that she had. And it wasn't. It was so devastating. It was like, it wasn't just emotional, it was devastating. I was hysterical. Like, I think this is the book that made me cry the most out of all the books that I read last year. It was intense. I was not okay at the end of this book, and I couldn't believe it, because I thought what I was getting into was something very happy, which it was. It was also a light, happy story, but the ending of it, man, just really did me in. So this was the perfect book to answer that question. Do still highly recommend though. This was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. And then I also wanted to mention Amari and the Night Brothers, because I can't resist an opportunity to talk about Amari, which is my favorite middle grade of all time. And because of the fact that it was a middle grade fantasy, I thought it was going to be light and fun and easy. And it was fun, but it was also really deep, and it really hit me emotionally. And once again, I ended up crying while reading this book. You guys know by now how much I love this book. It was one of my favorites of the year. Absolutely adore Amari. Cannot wait for the second book. But yeah, I did not expect it to hit as hard as it did. Question number 6 is characters who make you believe in soulmates. I have 2 separate answers for this. So when I think of soulmates, like, obviously soulmates don't have to mean romantic. It doesn't have to be a romantic situation. So the first one I want to talk about is Safi and Isolde from Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. These 2 girls are so close. They are absolute goals when it comes to friendship, partnership. They're not romantically involved. They're just really good friends. They are thread sisters. The love that they have for each other is just so beautiful. And that is like one of the main things about this book and this series in general that I fell in love with, was just the incredible friendship between Safi and Isolde. Where one goes, the other follows, and they're always there for each other. And I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. So I had to mention them. But I also recently finished reading The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake, which I loved, like I'm obsessed with. And there are 2 characters in here, Nova and Libby, and they kind of hate each other, but also not. They kind of have this weird combative, competitive relationship, but at the same time, one is literally no good without the other. They are so perfect for each other. Like, they're just so aligned. They complement each other. Their magic complements each other, and one would not be as great without the other. They're both very powerful on their own, but together they are unstoppable. And I just thought the dynamic between Nova and Libby was incredible. It was one of my favorite things about this book. I love their relationship. I love their dynamic, and they absolutely make me believe in soulmates, because they just are perfect for each other. They fit perfectly together. Not necessarily in a romantic way, but absolute soulmates. Like, you can't have one without the other. Question number 7 is name a book that features rebuilding relationships. And for some reason I had a really hard time thinking of an answer for this one, but I decided to go with A Psalm of Storms and Silence by Rosanna A. Brown. I think that this book and this series in general has a lot to do with rebuilding relationships on a much grander scale, not just individually, but like between peoples, between nations. Because of things that happened in the past, our characters in the present have a certain view of the other people, and they have to find a way to break that cycle and to appreciate people as individuals as opposed to what happened in the past. And it's all about rebuilding that. And I think it's also about rebuilding relationships with yourself, if that makes sense. So I talked about this obviously in my February wrap up, that I thought that what Rosanna A. Brown did in this was so brilliant, and I think that this is a perfect example of rebuilding relationships, but just in a much broader way. And then finally, question number 8, name a book that left you immersed in the culture. I have 2 answers for this one as well. So for the first one, I want to mention Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Basher-Doost. This is a Persian-inspired YA fantasy, and I absolutely fell in love with the inspiration for the culture that this is inspired by, but also the culture within the book and how the magic works. And this was one of the books that I felt so completely immersed in the setting of, and like the mythology behind the world and the history of the world. It just completely sucked me in. I loved absolutely everything about it. I loved how well thought out it was, and how real it felt while reading. I think that Melissa Basher-Doost is a very underrated author. I absolutely love her writing. I think it's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and this is one where the world just felt so real for me. So I had to mention that one. And then also, same thing with Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I feel the same way. The setting for this is based on the pre-Columbian Americas, and I think I really enjoyed a lot of that particular culture that was brought into this book, but also just the mythology of the book itself, the world, the setting. I thought it was so unique, something I've never seen done before, and I was so immersed in it. I could picture it in my mind, I could see the sights, I could smell the smells. It was so vivid for me. So this is another one that I thought was incredibly immersive, and I absolutely loved. And that is it. That is the Encanto book tag. Do make sure to check out the original creator for the tag, link down below in the description. Talk to me down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. Let me know some of your answers to these questions in the comments below. I absolutely love hearing from you. But also let me know if you have seen Encanto and if you absolutely loved it as much as I did. But that is going to be it from me today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!